Oregon's got a lot of issues to fix. Dillon Gabriel is not problem number one.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. This episode is brought to you by our friends at 5 Hour Energy. Go to 5hourenergy.com. Use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to get 20% off your order. I will answer some of your guys' biggest questions and concerns after another win. That's the good news for Oregon here. But it certainly was not as pretty as everyone would like it to look. And there were steps forward taken in this game against Boise State. So we'll talk about all of that. But I want to start with Dillon Gabriel because this is a much discussed topic amongst Duck fans right now. Dillon Gabriel is not playing the best football that he is going to play as an Oregon Duck. He's only got one season. He's going to play better. I am confident saying that. He is not playing as well as he's capable of. He's not making every single throw. Is he the biggest problem with Oregon right now? Does he need to be replaced? Absolutely, positively not. This is a complete overreaction, and I get it. I get it. When things are going wrong, you look for someone to blame. You look for a boogeyman. But that doesn't mean the person who your gut reaction tells you is the problem is actually the issue. Perfect example. My beloved Seattle Mariners are going to miss the playoffs this year because they're a dumpster fire of an organization. And so they had a 10.5 game lead on the division, which they haven't won in 23 years, in June. They lost it. They're now 5-6 games. I don't know. I stopped keeping track. They fired their manager. Now that's a move that's understandable. They said they needed a new voice in the room. And then they elevated somebody from within the organization to be the full-time manager. Does that make a heck of a lot of sense? Not particularly in my view. And guess what? Since the new manager took over, it hasn't gotten any better. It is the same. The team is still the same. So you can think that it's one person's fault. It is never one person's fault. This is not, I had people tweeting at me, oh, Dante Moore needs to get in there. Gabriel's terrible. Like, no, Gabriel missed a couple of throws. I tweeted about it in the fourth quarter. Why? Because he missed a couple of throws. You are not expected, even when guys are open, I do not expect you to hit every single deep ball. He did hit one to Evan Stewart early in the game. That was a great thing to see, and I'll talk about that more later on today's show. But he missed back-to-back wide open wide receivers in the fourth quarter, when the game was very much in question because it was until literally the final seconds. Shout out to Atticus Sappington. Shout out to Jaden Lamar. Heroes of the day. Now, Sappington, of course, missed the extra point, which required him to kick a field goal instead of Oregon taking a knee at the end. But he got the job done. Oregon wins the game. So, life can be worse. You could be Notre Dame. You could be Auburn. You could be anyone else who was upset over the weekend. It could be worse for Oregon fans. But certainly, it needs to get better. And Dillon Gabriel is the perfect encapsulation of that sentiment. It could be so much worse. He was 41 of 49 for 380 and 2 touchdowns. And he was 18 of 21 for 240, I think it was, and a couple of touchdowns. Like, that's not bad. When you consider the fact that Oregon had 2 special teams touchdowns. Now, is the offense operating at peak efficiency? No, it is not. Is Gabriel a part of that? Yes. Is he the top reason? No. It's the offensive line. That is still the number one issue. And I think it's contributing to Gabriel not playing the way that he's fully capable of. But regardless of how the offensive line is played or how comfortable he's feeling in the pocket, how much he trusts the unit to protect him or what his pocket presence is, all of those things that can be improved, when you have 2 wide open guys, you got to be able to hit at least one of them. And he wasn't even able to make them catchable throws. He overshot him. It was a full-on Jimmy Garoppolo. Bad sequence. I hope you also, if you're in the anti-Dillon Gabriel camp at the moment, talk about the good stuff that he's doing, because there are good things that he is doing. The pass to Evan Stewart was beautiful. The cover zero blitz 59-yard touchdown to Trayshawn Holden was great. The drive to go down and kick a game-winning field goal was well executed. He doesn't get credit for the yardage, but he threw a good, catchable ball that resulted in a pass interference that Trayshawn Holden drew in the end zone. These are good things. He's doing good things. He's not doing everything well. He's not sensing the pressure incredibly well. He and the offensive line seem to be operating in different universes at sometimes. And it doesn't feel like they're on the same page. It does not feel like they are in sync. Does the Matthew Bedford injury on its own account for all of that? Probably not. Losing the center, your most important position along the offensive line, because he's the guy making all the calls and getting everybody into the right situation, is just probably more impactful than we gave it credit for coming into the year. And it is a good thing Oregon's non-conference slate is what it is, or else this could be a much different start. And sure enough, Boise State just about beat Oregon. And if Oregon isn't careful on Saturday, they'll go into Corvallis and lose for a third straight time. But if they play to their potential, then the game won't be close. The game shouldn't be close. But could it be close if Oregon plays down and continues making these mistakes? Yes. So when I watch Dillon Gabriel play, I see a guy who had a fumble that was bad. The ball shouldn't have been snapped to him. I don't know who to blame more. Probably Charlie Pickard on that center exchange there. It was snapped to him by surprise. But at that point, I think it was a 2nd and 2. You got to go down, or you got to be able to hold on to the football. So bad snap. Okay, your teammate made a mistake. Don't turn one mistake into two. And when you have open guys, you got to hit them. And when you sense pressure, he's just got to sense pressure better. I think that's the number one thing that I see watching Dillon Gabriel play. He doesn't have a great feel in the pocket right now. When he is actually given time to throw the football, though, by the offensive line, he's exactly who I thought he was, which is a darn good quarterback and capable of getting Oregon to where they want to go. Something to ponder if you're worried about Dillon Gabriel right now. I get it. He's not playing his best football, but he is not playing terrible football. This is not Anthony Brown from a couple of years ago. It is not even close to that situation. During that year, I wanted to see Ty Thompson because I just wanted to see what Oregon had. And of course, Ty Thompson's now the backup down at Tulane, so perhaps the coaching staff knew a thing or two. But I knew that there was no next year with Anthony Brown, at least within the context of that particular staff. While playing for that coaching staff, I think that was all that he was able to do, and it was a frustrating watch. And the offense is not great, but it starts with the offensive line. It starts with the run game. Oregon netted. Now, I don't know why. I don't think sack yards should count towards rushing yards. I think that's highly irritating from the NCAA, but the NCAA itself can be highly irritating. So that's not a surprise. Oregon had, I think, 110 rushing yards in the game. Jordan James averaged 6 yards a carry for the second straight week. He was 15 for 95 in the first week. He was just over 100 in this game. It's not as if there are no running lanes. It's just not consistent. Oregon has to find consistency with the offensive line. I think that'll make the running game better, obviously, but I think it'll make Dillon Gabriel better. But when you think about Bo Nix and how good he was the last couple of years, was he better year one or year two? Answer, year two. But by a pretty good amount. He was not sniffing the Heisman ceremony. There were extenuating circumstances there. He had an injury late in the year that hurt his numbers. Oregon lost a couple of games instead of just one. But he was going to be the Heisman Trophy winner if Oregon beats Washington in the Pac-12 championship game, not in year one, but in year two. Oregon was a better team in year two. There is some adjustment here. You can take all the practice reps and all the fall camp time that you want, but there are in-game reps that you've got to be able to have. And Bo Nix got a lot better year one to year two, even though he was changing offensive coordinators. And Oregon you get better over the course of the season. Think about this as well, and I'll close with this thought on the Dillon Gabriel subject. Oregon, week 2 last year. I saw someone in the YouTube comments compare this Boise State game to Texas Tech. I think it's a great comp. A lot of penalties, very sloppy. You won the football game. Go work on what you need to work on. Have individuals improve to reach their full potential and clean up the penalty yards. That happened last year, and Oregon went on to go 11-1. So, yes, Dillon Gabriel can play better football. To say that he's the number one issue, I think, is wildly off base. Wildly off base. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter. Bunch of you sent me your questions, your concerns, what Oregon needs to do better. And we'll answer those questions coming up next. After I let you know about 5-Hour Energy. Do you know what 5-Hour Energy does? It fixes tired fast. Whether you have a long list to do for work or DIY projects at home, take a 5-Hour Energy shot so you can check off everything off your list. If you're like me, you always have a large list of projects or just a lot of things to do. I am incredibly busy this time of year compared to the summer, and 5-Hour Energy is the perfect thing for you. With zero sugar, convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5-Hour Energy website has flavors galore: watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and more. There's a flavor for everyone, so go try them all. You can make your own 12-pack, you can make your own 24-pack, and they get delivered right to your door. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5-Hour Energy product today, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to get 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order, cannot be used with other promotions. This code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. What sorts of concerns do all you Oregon fans have? Well, that's what I was wondering. Many of you sent them to me anyway, but if you have a question, let me know in the YouTube comments, X, formerly known as Twitter, at @SMcLaughlinCFB or at LockedOnDucks. Or if you want priority access, you can become a Locked On Ducks insider. That link is in the description below. Wherever you listen to or watch the show, and you get a free 14-day trial, and you get all sorts of other perks as well. This one came in from Corey. Hey, Spencer, appreciate your coverage as always. Thank you, good sir. How much of an impact do you think Oregon's offensive line injuries are impacting their play? I saw Bedford warming up again last night, so I think he's getting closer to playing. Maybe our Ducks just aren't as good as we originally thought, but the second half gave me a little more hope. Either way, go Ducks as always. The sloppiness has to improve. Everyone acknowledges that. The offensive line can help, but I mean, some of this, frankly, is luck of the draw. If you look at the way that the analytics community treats fumbles, there is a strong element of randomness to it. How many times this year do you think Dillon Gabriel and a multi-year player in Patrick Herbert are going to fumble in the same game? Now, after those fumbles happen, preferably you don't, as in after the Herbert fumble, give up a touchdown on this complicated play called halfback dive. And the defense is, I'm going to talk more about this later in the week, but the defense is not my biggest concern for Oregon. It's on the offensive side of the ball. Ashton Genty's really good. The defense has things to clean up, but the defense feels a lot closer to hitting its potential than the offense. And I don't think that's a controversial take. Maybe it is. It's the internet. That's always possible. But as for your question, Corey, with the offensive line, I think the Bedford injury is playing a factor. I don't believe that it would be as expected or reaching its full potential if Bedford had been there since the season started. I don't have an update on what his availability is. I'm sure Lanning will get asked about it as press conferences throughout the week. And, hopefully he's able to go because that's a projected starter. That's the offensive line unit that was running most consistently throughout fall camp. But Oregon did find something along the offensive line, and sometimes it just takes some shuffling. So sometimes it can take time to figure out what your rotations are, even throughout the course of the season, even when you have a really good staff and really good coaches like Alik Terry. Last year, I don't remember Poncho playing a ton early in the year, but he played more as the season went on because they were figuring stuff out. And it felt like when Oregon moved Poncho to center, which is what he was going to be coming into the year before Bedford got hurt, they put Strother at left guard and Harper at right guard. That felt like the best offensive line unit, and that there was a jump. I didn't feel like Oregon's offensive line was suddenly dominating and that they were just controlling the game, and it looked like one of the 10 best units in all of college football the way that, some national media outlets expected it to be coming into the year. And frankly, I had that expectation when you have 3.5 returning starters from a unit that allowed 5 sacks all of last year. But clearly missing Jackson Powers-Johnson is going to take some adjustment. New center, new quarterback. That's what it looks like to me, is that the synchronicity between those two positions is not there. It does not look there. They're messing up protections. They're snapping the ball when they're not supposed to. It just looks a little bit disconjointed. But we're 2 games into the season. And the good news is Oregon is going to be heavily favored in each of their next 3 games. And even though they're playing like crap right now, and they are sloppy, and they're making mistakes, and they're shooting themselves in the foot, I've seen glimpses of potential, just like I saw in the Texas Tech game last year. Just like I saw a couple of years ago against Washington State. You find a way to win those games. you study the tape and then you bury it from your minds and say, okay, that's not the football team that we are. And by the end of the season, each of the last 2 years, Oregon's had a game like that, and by the end of the year, they're playing much better football. Last year, week 2 Oregon goes and barely scrapes by Texas Tech. Last year, week 11 Oregon, the team that played, or week 13 that played Oregon State at home, a top 15 Oregon State team that came to Autzen Stadium, if that version of Oregon plays Texas Tech, they win the game by 2 to 3 possessions. I feel incredibly confident saying that. This group is capable, important distinction here, it is capable of making those sorts of jumps because I know the talent level is there. Between the proven transfers or the proven production that are returners on this roster, the coaching staff continuity, it's all there. I know that it's there. They just have to figure out how to plot their way down the yellow brick road. So, I hope that answers your question. Edwin asks, hi Spencer, second game leaving much to be desired. As I was watching, it occurred to me that maybe this team needs to find who they are. It seems like the short pass is consistent, not obvious passing downs where the most consistent outcome has been giving up a sack. Oof, but kind of fair. Mike Leach teams would pass to run with the air raid. So I'm thinking that maybe Oregon embraces their identity and pass to run. I don't think this plays well with analysts, but if it is effective, the fans would love it. Your thoughts? Here's what the fans love, Edwin. The fans love offenses that work. Don't care how it looks. Do you score points? Are you good in the red zone? Can you convert third downs? I don't care how it looks. Are you good enough? This is how I feel with transfer quarterbacks. I know there are a lot of fans that want, Oregon to recruit a high school quarterback, develop him, have him be the starter, and, stop bringing in transfers and whatnot. I'm open to that being a method for Oregon finding a signal caller that has a lot of success. But do I care that much if it works? No. Because if the transfer is going to be better, then that's the route that I want to go. Should we have developed a high school quarterback instead of Bo Nix? Should we be going under center all the time and not being shotgun because the offense is struggling in the last couple of weeks? Oregon's not going to abandon the run. The offensive line is too veteran. The running backs are too capable. It's not part of Dan Lanning and Will Stein's identity. They're going to continue to figure out how to run the football, and you can see these changes happen. Last year, I was calling Southern Utah games, as I still do. And if you missed yesterday's show, I got to plug the T-Birds because they won an FBS game for the first time since 2013 in El Paso against UTEP. It was a thrill to call. But last year, first half of the season, I don't have these numbers specifically, but this is about the range. First half of the season, Southern Utah ran the ball for about 65, 70 yards a game. Over the second half of the year, they ran it for about 130. Spencer, that's Southern Utah. It's FCS. They're going up against comparable competition. They're going up against their peers. Some things take longer to develop. Tez Johnson last year took longer to develop. Go look at Tez's numbers. I talked about this coming into the year and why I thought he'd be in for a huge season. And he was almost non-existent in the passing game, but of course he had a couple of big returns, and Evan Stewart did a lot of really, really great things, who I'm going to talk about later in today's show. But Tez Johnson, first 4 games of the year, was averaging less than 5 receptions a game, like under 60 yards, and then he tore it up. And then he settled into the offense, and he and Bo developed a rhythm and a chemistry. Did you know that they're brothers? I think that is what Oregon fans want to happen from the run game here. It can happen. It's just a matter of Oregon going and making the adjustments. But to say that you've seen 2 games worth of struggles in a certain area, so that's how it's going to be for the next 10, I do not subscribe to that particular notion. Last question here from Blazer Duck. Asked about why Oregon's getting outplayed by a team who doesn't recruit nearly as well. Well, that's a completely fair assessment. Boise State does not recruit at the same level as Oregon, and Oregon was outplayed by Boise State, but still won the football game. Do you think if Oregon were the less talented team, they would have won that football game? I don't think so. That's the advantage. That's what we saw, I think, a lot during the Mario Cristobal era. Sometimes you go, wow, kind of looks like they got outplayed and outcoached, but they just have as much or better talent at every single position, and eventually that pays off. Doesn't mean in every single matchup it goes the way that it should on paper, but eventually the law of averages will play out when you just have better guys. And I think that's what happened with Oregon on Saturday. But why did they get outplayed? Mostly self-inflicted wounds. Patrick Herbert not tucking the football, having it stripped. Missed tackles on Ashton Genty. He's a really good player. Jeff Boston did not have his best game at linebacker. If you go look at some of the tackles he missed, not his best effort. Not his best effort. But Ashton Genty is really good. And Ashton Genty is a guy who can play at any school in the country. That guy is a crazy good back. He's going to have, I think, a really successful NFL career, like Doug Martin on steroids sort of NFL career. He gets on the right team, he could be a fantasy monster too. But anyway, I digress. The reason Oregon got outplayed is because they had a lot of self-inflicted wounds, and Boise State played a really good game. But they did not play a great game. Oregon outplayed itself more than Boise State outplayed Oregon. I'm not trying to take away from how Boise State played. They had a good game. Their quarterback was 17 of 40 passing the ball. I know he wasn't sacked a bunch. He was under pressure a pretty good amount. You go watch the defensive line. They were winning to the point of attack a lot. Defensive line, I got no concerns. They're exactly what I thought they would be. The pass defense looks improved from a season ago in many areas. Brandon Johnson is a stud. Absolute stud. So I think it's more about how Oregon played and their inability to get out of their own way. More than it is, well, Boise State just outplayed them and outcoached them. Well, Boise State coached a really good game. Boise State's got a good staff. They've got some NFL players. And the margin is close enough to Oregon to where if you don't play to your standard, if you don't play the way you're capable, that's what a team's going to do to you. But at the end of the day, Oregon's got better players. Oregon found a way to win the game. And Oregon's 2-0. So, hope that answers your question as well. If I didn't, let me know. We got shows all week. Plenty of time to discuss. Not on Tuesday's show. Tomorrow's show is going to have a very, very special guest. I'm not going to spoil the surprise. If you're a Locked On Ducks insider, you might, and by might, I mean you definitely will, get to know who it is ahead of time. I promise you won't be disappointed. But for all the negative that Oregon has given us to talk about and debrief and discuss and analyze and break down, there were steps forward in this Boise State game. There were. So let's talk about those next. After we talk about Ibotta, are you taking that dream vacation this summer but dreading the cost? With Ibotta, you get cash back on all your purchases so you can spend more time making memories this summer, next summer, in the winter, holidays, wherever, and less time dreaming about them. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time that you shop. You earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys, everything. They've got it. So you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. And guess what? The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year, which could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, the flight you've been eyeing, fancy dinner you've been craving, whatever you want. Ibotta will give you that opportunity. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta using the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store, download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. It's that simple. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store. Use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. You can't talk about positives in this win over Boise State, the first ever for the Ducks, by the way, woohoo, without talking about Jaden Lamar and Atticus Sappington. So Sappington misses an extra point. That becomes costly as Boise State ties the game. They would have gone for two. Maybe they get it, maybe they don't, and you have to kick the field goal anyway. But Atticus Sappington hits a game-winning field goal. Look, was it an easy field goal relative to some others that Oregon kickers have had to make? Yes. Did he make it anyway? Yes. Does that boost his confidence? 100%. So I'm here for it. Shout out to Atticus Sappington. But Jaden Lamar, the actual hero of the Republic, Noah Whittington, pulls a Kalen Clay / Deshaun Jackson, who first did this back when it was cool, and drops the ball at the 1 yard line. And Lamar's like, oh, I'll just pick it up. I'll just grab it. You never know. You never know. Well, turns out that might have saved the game, or Oregon very easily could have lost. But those are the, shall we call it, honorable mention positives, because, well, honorable mention isn't the right term. Those are the non-transferable positives. How about that? I hope Jaden Lamar doesn't have to pick up the ball because we drop it at the 1 yard line. I hope that Atticus Sappington doesn't have to kick another game-winning field goal, at least not against an opponent where Oregon is favored by 18 to 20 points, because that's what they could cover if they play to their potential. But the positives I saw in this game started with Evan Stewart. Breakout game for the Texas A&M transfer. 5 catches, 112 yards. Tez Johnson had 3 catches for -1 yards in this game. Still made an impact with a punt return touchdown, which was so awesome for 2 reasons. Number 1, Dan Lanning was sprinting up and down with him on the sideline. That was cool. Number 2, Tez Johnson said he idolized DeAnthony Thomas growing up. And he just took a punt to the house at Autzen Stadium in front of, I didn't check the attendance, 58, 60,000, whatever it was, on Saturday night at Autzen. So that's pretty awesome. But Evan Stewart, heck of a game. Heck of a game. And I want to start with Stewart. And by the way, I was mentioning Jordan James' numbers earlier. 17 for 102 yards, exactly 6 yards a carry. I don't think I would have guessed off the top of my head that 17 times 6 is 112. I don't know why, but anyway. So Evan Stewart, 5 for 112 and a touchdown. Trayshawn Holden has an explosive play in the passing game. Trayshawn Holden, it puts himself in position late in the game to draw a defensive pass interference, which I feel like Oregon has only been on the other side of my entire life. That's not a play that, like, the most successful passing play is the underthrown deep ball. It is really hard to defend, especially once the defender has his back turned, as we've watched Oregon DBs struggle with over the past couple of seasons. But seeing Oregon push the ball down the field, I hope was a breath of fresh air. There are plenty of reasons to feel negative about this Oregon team right now and think, boy, could we be on the brink of a bust of a season? Could we be on the brink of going 8-4, 7-5? Could this look? If you have those worries, I understand it. I don't think Oregon's going to go 7-5, 8-4, 9-3. Look, if they keep playing like this, yeah, that might end up being their record come season's end. But what was one thing that Oregon did not accomplish in week 1 against Idaho? They didn't have explosive passing plays. Well, what do you know? Here are explosive passing plays. A 67-yarder to Evan Stewart to set up a touchdown run by Dillon Gabriel. A 59-yarder, which was the best sequence by the offensive line all night, bar none. That was, I believe, a 4-man route, cover 0, mano-a-mano, 7-man pressure. Line picks it up. Gabriel makes the right read. Holden beats his man. Boom, he's gone. I've been a big Trayshawn Holden fan for the last couple of years, and that's why. He made 2 massive plays, explosive plays. I know a defensive pass interference isn't technically an explosive. How big did it feel on that final drive for the Ducks? I love that Gabriel took the shot. I love that he gave him a chance to catch the ball, and then he ends up drawing the flag. And you push the ball down the field to Evan Stewart, not once but twice. Remember, after Tez Johnson had the shorter punt return, which was still a good return, they then threw a beauty. I say they because I'm giving credit to the offensive line for giving Dillon Gabriel time to throw the football, and he drops it right in the breadbasket to Evan Stewart on the deep post for a touchdown. Oregon fans wanted to see explosive passing plays. You know why? Because you need to have them. They got to be there. You got to be able to get chunk yardage like that. Everything cannot be an 8-12 play 75-yard drive where you have to execute over and over and over again. Sometimes you need some easy ones, and Oregon found a couple of easy ones, and they should absolutely continue to push the ball down the field. They've got the weapons to do it. That was a great thing to see. So that's the first thing. Second thing, special teams, 2 touchdowns. Woo! 2 touchdowns. Noah Whittington and Tez Johnson with a kick and a punt return. I said coming into the year, I was asked several times over the summer, hey, what do you think about special teams? What do you think about this? And I was like, well, Sappington looks good on paper, and we'll see. I mean, he's got the game winner, but he also missed an extra point. So maybe any kicker that puts on an Oregon uniform is just cursed. Hopefully not. But Sappington did drill the game winner. No problemo. But one thing that I brought up routinely over the summer, and everydayers are probably aware of this, is I feel like Oregon needs to get more out of the return game. Help out your offense every now and then. Well, the offense struggled, not entirely, but it struggled in this game again, and you get a couple of touchdowns there, and it ends up winning you the football game. So, great to see Noah Whittington healthy and making plays. Great to see Tez Johnson returning punts. He's just get him the football. Get him the football. But how crazy is it that Oregon created explosive passing plays and their best wide receiver had -1 receiving yards on the day? I've said from the time this wide receiving core got formed is the best receiving core over the last 2 seasons Oregon has had in my lifetime. That's playing itself out. in a major way. That Tez can go 3 for negative. If I told you going into Boise State, hey, Tez is going to have 3 catches for -1 yards, you think, oh, offense not moving the ball. Dillon Gabriel's not hitting any passes. No, he's just finding other guys. And I thought that was great to see. T. Ferg involved in the passing game, no surprise, 3 for 27. Sadiq 2 for 20. There is a clear, concerted effort to utilize 13 personnel, 1 back, 3 tight ends. I'm here for it. I like Oregon's 3 tight ends. And Sadiq is a dynamic playmaker, and I'm a fan of getting him the football. So, last thing, on the offensive line, which still has a long ways to go, really feels like a left to right combination of Connerly, Strother, Poncho, Harper, Cornelius. Feels like that's got to be the 5. It wasn't the 5 the entire second half, but it sure was the 5 when Oregon needed them the most. And last week, Oregon couldn't get a yard against Idaho. Well, 3rd and 1 against a better team with more composite talent on it in Boise State. And Oregon has Jordan James break through for, 11, 12 yards? I mean, they opened up a big hole on that right side. That duo concept from the overloaded look with a couple tight ends out there, it's been Oregon's best running play, I think, for the last couple of weeks. So I think that's a step forward. Again, glimpses of good offensive line play. Glimpses of an explosive passing game. Can Oregon string it together? That'll be the question. Thanks for making this your first listen of the day. Go make Locked On College Football your second. I host over there, keeping you up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. Gosh, it's so great to have football back. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.